Stop right there, sir. This is private property. The sentence cracked through the quiet of Sycamore Bend like ice in a glass. A woman in a pale blue dress stood beside the keypad, chin lifted, finger already aimed like a verdict. 3 security guards formed a wall around her, Tom with the square jaw, Marco with a nervous laugh, and Jay fiddling with a pair of cuffs as if they were keys to the whole neighborhood. The man at the gate said nothing. He was broad-shouldered, skin sun-warmed, calm. He wore a charcoal athletic tee with a single word across the chest. Steadfast. No cufflinks. No watch, no suit. Hands clasped in front of him. Steady, unbothered. Who waits like that when they're being pushed out? Who keeps still when someone tries to erase them? He did. The street ran along the hills above the coast, Briar Ridge, where olive trees lined the slope and the sea wind threaded through iron fences. The mansion behind the gate looked out over the water with dark windows like unblinking eyes. A small red LED pulsed on the keypad. The system was awake, listening. "You don't live here," the woman said, closer now. "Residents don't show up looking like this." Tom grinned without humor. Marco's laugh came out thin. Jay tapped the cuffs against his palm. Cold metal on warm night air. A promise still, the man didn't argue. He didn't plead. He waited. Silence unsettles people who rely on noise to win. Ever seen that? They talk louder when you say less. "Sir," Tom said, voice smooth as a warning. "Turn around." Not another step. The man's eyes lifted, calm and clear. "You're sure I don't belong?" That one sentence bent the air. Jay chuckled, not kindly. "People with real money drive up with drivers. People with real business don't come in gym shirts." The woman crossed her arms, heels biting into the curb. "You're blocking residents. Move along." Behind them, the keypad hummed. A soft scan, a pause. A decision forming. A neighbor in a red windbreaker slowed his morning run to a walk. A teenager on a scooter nudged closer, phone out, camera up, voice barely a whisper. "I'm filming." The man at the gate watched the keypad, eyes steady. He had seen this kind of scene before. At 22, holding a cashier's check while a landlord told him the apartment accidentally went to someone else. At 29, at a car lot when a valet tossed him keys that weren't his and said, "Put it around back." At 34, in a lobby he funded, asked if he was lost. Same play, new actors. The keypad blinked once. Red, then green. The gate's speaker chimed with a tone that carried, simple and sure. "Welcome home, Mr. Reed." Every sound on the street went quiet. Tom's grin dried up. Marco's laugh died mid-breath. Jay's hand froze on the cuffs. The woman's jaw twitched. "Anyone could spoof that," she snapped. "That proves nothing." "Really? After a system says the man's name? After it softens the whole street with a welcome home? What more do you need?" Mr. Reed did not move. He adjusted the strap on a plain leather case, no brand, no flash, and stood straighter, not taller. "Calm can do that. It fills space without a shout." "Protocols require verification," Tom insisted, latching onto the one rope he had left. His tone sharpened like he wanted the word itself to hold the power he was losing. "We don't open gates because a computer says a name." But the computer wasn't finished. The cameras above the gate swiveled, lenses whispering over metal. They did not lock on Mr. Reed. They locked on the guards. A second chime, deeper, rolled out into the cul-de-sac like a drumbeat. Unauthorized personnel detected. Access suspended. Tom's badge flickered, buzzed once, and went dark. Marco slapped his earpiece and winced when the dispatch line turned to static. Jay's screen showed a single word. Revoked. What's the sound of a wall realizing it's not a wall? "This system fault," Marco said too quickly. The woman waved them forward anyway. "Detain him." "That's your job. Is power still power when it needs a chorus? When the chorus goes quiet?" Mr. Reed's voice came calm and low. "This house recognizes who belongs. It also recognizes who doesn't." His words fell light and landed heavy. "Sir," Jay said, jaw tight. "ID." He reached out, fingertips brushing the fabric of Mr. Reed's sleeve. The ground lights along the driveway snapped on at once, sharp beams, bright as noon. A warning tone cut the air. 3 measured notes, then a voice from the speakers, cool and precise. "Alert. Unauthorized contact with property owner." Jay ripped his hand away like he'd touched a burner. The teenager with the phone stammered into his mic. "Did you hear that?" It said property owner. The woman clenched her teeth. "You hacked it." He hacked it. He is not getting in. At 19, Mr. Reed had been held at the back of a store while a manager searched a bag he'd never touched. At 31, he sat through a board meeting where a consultant explained his own plan back to him. At 38, he stood outside his own gate while strangers wrote fiction. Tonight, he remembered all of it with a single breath. Not bitter, not soft, just real. The clothes don't prove anything, he said evenly. Deeds do. The neighbor in the red windbreaker raised a hand, voice steady. I live across from this house. That's Mr. Reed, he's been here for years. Stay out of this, the woman snapped, but her voice broke on out. Another neighbor rolled down a car window. I see him jogging here all the time, he said. He brings packages inside for folks. He belongs, witnesses. Truth grows when many people water it. Tom's shoulders squared again as if memory of training could mask the loss of control. You're escalating this, he told Mr. Reed, was he? Or was the silence doing what truth does? Expand until it leaves no room for lies. Jay lifted his badge as if it still had magic. You're not verified, he pushed louder now. Show proof. Otherwise, this is trespassing. He hit his radio. Static answered, indifferent. Even your radio knows who owns the place, someone called from the curb. Laughter cut through the tension, quick and rough. Not unkind to Reed, unkind to arrogance. The woman in blue didn't hide hers. Go back to where you came from, she said, each word heavy and slow like she wanted them to stick. You don't belong in Briar Ridge, isn't that the old line? Isn't that the same paint they use whenever they want to white out a person? Mr. Reed lifted his head eye to eye. You keep saying I don't belong. Why do you? The question hit like a mirror. What happens when the words you throw come back carrying your face? Jay snapped. That's it. He grabbed at Mr. Reed's arm and shoved. The cuffs clinked, final, hungry, sure they'd bite. But the metal wouldn't close. The latch jammed mid-swing, a stubborn hinge against a wrong story. The alarm deepened, lights pulsing in rhythm with a second voice, firmer than the first. Warning. Use of force against the property owner triggers escalation protocol. Jay stared at the cuffs in his hand like they'd betrayed him. Tom stepped in, mouth tight. Don't resist and this ends fast, he muttered, trying to convince himself more than anyone. Watch, the teenager whispered into his phone, breath short. It won't even lock. Every eye was on the cuffs. Every phone on the guards. Every breath on the edge. Mr. Reed spoke for the first time with volume. Not yelling. Clear. You called me a thief at the entrance to the home I own. Early, crowd answered with a sound you only hear when people realize they've been standing on the wrong side of a door. The cuffs slid off his wrist. Useless. He reached into his pocket slow and plain and lifted his phone. Maya, he said, voice level. Activate Eastgate protocol. A woman's voice answered at once, crisp through his speaker. Understood. Override engaged. Visual feed syncing. The cameras tightened their focus. The guards' radios went silent for good. On the keypad, a panel flashed to life with rows of text. Names. ID numbers. Clearance levels, then red. One after another, next to Tom, next to Marco, next to Jay. Access removed, the display read. Awaiting owner authorization. That's what you call a decision leaving footprints. The teenager's stream exploded. His system just shut them out, he breathed, voice shaking. Viewers stacking up by the hundreds and then thousands. The woman took a step forward, desperation sharp and loud. This is a performance. You're bluffing. I don't bluff with what's mine, Mr. Reed said. The speaker followed, tone unhurried. Security status terminated. Removal pending confirmation. Tom's badge buzzed weakly and then died screen gray. Marco pressed his earpiece again and flinched at silence. Jay stared at the cuffs in his palm as if the weight might argue on his behalf. You can't do that, the woman said, voice riding the last of her volume. You mistook my patience for permission, Reed answered. That was your last mistake. The alarm cut clean. The iron gates breathed open, not fast, not dramatic, just certain. The walkway lights along the drive glowed softer, like the house exhaled. Owner profile confirmed, the system said again, calm as a clerk, final as a stamp. Welcome home, Mr. Reed. The crowd's whisper became a ripple, then a wave. The runner nodded once. The neighbor in the car shook his head in disbelief. The teenager choked out. You heard that. Again. Public verification? Maya's voice asked from the phone, straight to the point. Mr. Reed looked at the faces, the screens, the open mouths at kitchen windows. Yes, he said. Let them see. The panel shifted from text to images. A business magazine cover. Reed capital, logo clean and simple, headline. Evan Reed expands across 3 continents. Another photo. Ribbon cut across this very gate, 2 summers ago. A city certificate embossed. A press release Q&A with the mayor. The record scrolled, purchase deed, date stamped. Utility bills. A photo of Reed handing out backpacks at the end of the cul-de-sac last fall. Same shirt, same smile. Proof doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just stands there and refuses to move. That's him, someone said. That's his place. Why didn't they know? Another asked. But the words sounded small now. Late. The woman in blue took a step back, eyes darting for an exit that no longer existed. He manipulated the system, she insisted, but there was no muscle left in the insistence. The neighbor in the red windbreaker lifted his phone higher, voice firm. You laid hands on the man who lives here, he said to the guards. We all saw it. And it's recorded. Tom's jaw worked. We didn't know. You didn't want to know, someone answered from the curb. The car window neighbor leaned out. You tried to shrink him because you didn't like how he looked when he was big. Isn't that the whole story? Shrink first, learn later? Mr. Reed let silence do the work again. The longer it sat, the more the weight of what had happened settled where it belonged. Finally, he raised the phone. Maya, he said, log the incident. Terminate Eastgate security detail effective now. Confirmed, Maya replied. Credentials revoked. Employment files flagged. Notification sent. Tom's badge buzzed one last time and went black. Marco's device flashed, logged out. Jay's screen said access denied, employment ended. A sound rose from the crowd, applause at first like rain starting, then steadier. Not a cheer for cruelty. A release. A relief that something had landed upright. The woman in blue tried to speak again. But words don't hold when the ground beneath them collapses. Mr. Reed turned. Not to gloat, not to wave, but to look each of the 3 guards in the face. You called me a problem, he said simply. You became your own. He faced the woman last. You wrote a story about me in your head, he said. But the deed isn't in your head. She stared back, last bit of defiance wilted by truth without temperature. The teenager swallowed and lifted his phone higher. People are watching, he whispered more to himself. Like, a lot. Let them, the neighbor in the car said, voice quiet. Let them see what silence can do. The gate stood open. The driveway stretched ahead like a promise that didn't need an audience. The house lights began to rise along the roofline, warm and gold. An old sycamore at the bend rustled. A dog barked, then went quiet like even it understood the line had been drawn. Do you want the public-facing display to archive? Maya asked through the phone. Yes, Reed said. And send the raw security footage to my counsel. Done, Maya replied. Mr. Reed looked at the crowd. Not a speech. Not a sermon. Just enough. Respect doesn't wear a uniform, he said. It wears choices. From the back, a mother pulled her daughter closer and said out loud, so it would not be missed. Remember this. The guards stood smaller than they had looked minutes ago. Badges dark, radios silent, authority gone. The woman in blue pressed herself against the brick pillar like stone could hide her from what she'd become. Evan? Maya asked softly in his ear, using the name only people who knew him used. Do you want HR present for personnel removal? Yes, he said. And ensure severance conditions exclude misconduct protection. Document tonight in full. Documented, Maya replied. The keypad panel dimmed back to its base screen. The cameras returned to their gentle sweep. The driveway lights softened. Anything else? Maya asked. Yes, Mr. Reed said. Restore access for everyone they locked out while they were busy locking me out. Restored, Maya said. He took one step toward the opening. It would have been easy to disappear inside and shut the world out. He didn't. He turned back once more. You called me a trespasser, he said, voice level, at my own home. You tried to erase me in a place with my name etched into the title. Tonight you learned something I learned a long time ago. Power doesn't need to raise its voice. What if we all learned that? What would change? The applause rose. Not loud enough to be a celebration, just honest. The runner in the red windbreaker nodded, one simple bow of the head. The neighbor at the car looked down, then up again, eyes softer. The teenager wiped his face with the back of his hand and said to his stream, You saw all of it. Every second. Public verification complete, the panel printed in plain text. Owner, Evan Reed, address verified. Records verified. Mr. Reed slipped the phone into his pocket, stepped through the gate, and the house recognized him with a soft chime. The kind you hear once and never forget. The iron swung wider, smooth and slow, like it knew the difference between ceremony and noise. He did not rush. He did not look back for permission. As he crossed the threshold, Maya's voice came one last time, clear and light. Welcome home. He nodded once, more to the truth than to the speaker, and said evenly, I don't need to film justice. I'm what happens when it arrives. The door at the top of the drive opened. Warm light pooled across stone. He went inside, and the sound of the door closing followed like a final period. Firm, clean, done. Outside, the crowd didn't move for a long moment. Not from shock, but from recognition. The applause faded. The whispers softened. Phones lowered. Somewhere, a kettle clicked off. Somewhere, a window slid shut. Life resumed, but not quite the same. The guards stood on the wrong side of a story they had tried to own. The woman looked smaller than the pillar behind her. The teenager checked his stream and said softly, It's still going. Not because it needed to, but because he couldn't quite believe the world had finally watched a door refuse to budge for a lie. At Sycamore Bend, the wind lifted the olive branches. The streetlights hummed, and the message lingered in the air where anyone could read it without a sign. Real power does not explain itself. It doesn't ask. It simply is.